Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but, in your car.
104.7 The K, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens in the studio for episode 219 of Dark Side of the Stream. This week was Jay's pick, a documentary on Netflix about O.J. Simpson. So
Can't stop the juice.
First off, did he do it?
Yeah, he did it.
All right. There's your
next
episode
week.
of Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Okay, joke's on you. Haha, we're back. It's not actually over just yet.
We are joined by a picture of the juice.
Honestly, the documentary watch could have been 2 minutes, and it's not like it showed me anything.
No, it did show some new stuff.
I mean, it showed new stuff that wasn't allowed in court,
which was amazing.
Is just a big eye-opener how flawed our justice system is. But before we get into that, again, the documentary is on Netflix, just came out. And
American
you're
Manhunt.
asking yourself, what else could you learn about this O.J. Simpson trial?
Yeah, I knew everything top to down, and I learned stuff.
Were you in L.A. when this went down?
I was not in L.A. when it went down, but I was back in L.A. shortly after it.
Were you there during the riots?
No, I was still in Hawaii. But right after this, I moved back to L.A.
So you're like, oh, hey, man,
so
this looks like LA's getting down now.
This was all fresh off the heels when I returned back to
What did
L.A.
it look
And
like?
I went to her place and drove to his place. I did that little drive, too, just to see.
And you could pull it off.
Easy could have pulled it off in the time frame. Easy.
Before we get into the legal, the justice, the balls dropped by
and that
the DA.
cop Furman, I always wondered what happened to him.
And arguably probably one of the greatest paid defensive lawyers ever. And I mean,
The dream team.
it was just like Michael
The
Jordan.
amount
and
of
those guys.
evidence against him.
And the fact that they were able still to get
that race
acquittal.
card, and they did it, man.
But again, there was a lot, like you said, going on in the world, and that definitely played a part
Hot off the
into
heels
this.
of Rodney King.
Also, having cameras in there, it was a circus. So yesterday,
And it was OJ, man. Everybody loves OJ.
well, up until this point,
Yeah.
and then that definitely divided it. Either way, that's the subject today. Dark Side of the Stream returns next on 104.7 The Cave. Well, 104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. It is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 219 this week, discussing OJ's...
American Manhunt. OJ Simpson.
Yeah, American Manhunt.
On Netflix.
So I still kind of remember when that chase went on TV. I remember watching it as a kid. I was a
I think
teenager.
everybody. Where were you? I think everybody
was
can
at
remember where they
home.
were at.
Yeah, it was like one of the first times like
Glued to the TV.
something like live like that had happened. Obviously, the riots was a big part of it, but that whole deal was just insane. Let me ask you this. You are just sitting home playing online poker, and I call you and I say, hey, I got into some trouble.
Yeah.
I need your help. And you're like, what happened? I'm like, I can't talk about it.
I'm grabbing a shovel and I'm coming to
You're
get
going
you.
to come help me?
Yeah, of
You
course.
would?
Yeah.
Man, I love you. That's
Yeah, of
for
course.
real? Really?
Yeah. No questions asked.
You just help me bury it?
Dead body?
You would take
yeah.
you would
I'd have
take
to.
you
I'd have
would
to.
take the charge of aiding and abetting after the fact.
I don't think they would catch me with that.
But that's a risk
I mean,
you're
it's a
willing
risk.
to take.
Yeah. I mean, some like AC was his homie, and he's like, hey man, come grab me. If you there's so many things in this case, like running like that from the cops.
Everything he did made him look guilty.
Yeah, you don't do that if you're not guilty.
Again, that's another question I want to know. I want to know
the ride or die part?
If you would do that.
Yeah.
Knowing you, I would probably do the same.
If I said, hey,
just because I know you
and I'm a good dude,
and I've never seen like a side of you unless you there again. Not to say that there isn't.
We all got some dark pasts, some dark secrets.
But we've worked together long enough, and we know each other candidly enough that I think that I have seen what you're capable of, and I just don't see you being able to put on some gloves and like literally violently murdering your partner and or that partner's lover. I don't see it in you. you know, it's interesting because up until this point, we're talking about at the time, one of the greatest running backs that had ever played the game.
And a beloved American figure.
In college and then in pro, and then would go on to have an incredible movie career, the Naked Gun movies. He was incredible in those.
Likable, the most likable guy in the world,
couldn't have been in. Now, there were some things that he was involved in. Again, I told Jay this story last week when we brought this up. I had a political science teacher when I was in junior high that was a huge conspiracy guy, had just spent thousands of hours in JFK, but also with the O.J. Simpson deal. And I was like, why? And he's like, I think it was a mob hit, and the reason being when he was doing a lot of cocaine, he used a lot of the restaurants in L.A. as a front to push product through. When he got clean, he shuttered them. They got mad. They say this was a revenge thing.
No,
I don't think
I'm not buying that one.
After everything's said and done, like if you mess up with the mafia, they're not going to go as far
They're
as
not going to do this.
Do something like this to frame you. You're just going to disappear.
Yeah.
It's just easier for them to make you go away than it is to frame you for murder, get police involved in it.
Yeah.
There's so many levels that would have happened to have. I'm sorry, I think it was named Mr. Richard. I think that was his name. I'm sorry, Mr. Richard, you're crazy, and that's not what happened. But again, when he was talking about this was probably 3 or 4 years after the fact. So, you know, again, now that we're, 30, 40 years.
This documentary sheds, it really explains the whole case really nicely. It shows evidence you've never seen before, and it interviews now some of the people involved, which is it was just a really good recap and very well presented. I felt
because there's a lot of noise
and it's a lot of rehash too. It's a lot, you've heard it all, but this was really nice. It was a really good one.
And ultimately, that is the job of the prosecuting attorney, the DA in this instance, to make it just like that for the juror. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do that, and they dropped the ball. And a guy who, in my opinion, killed his wife and her lover.
Yeah, after you watch this, you'll definitely
see how
for
far
sure.
they dropped the ball,
and
how good his defense attorneys were, and how in this country, if you got money, you can get off with murder. We'll talk next about that. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Jay Stevens, Mike the Intern, back in the studio. It's Dark Side of the Stream, episode 219, discussing OJ's documentary on Netflix. So before we get into the illegal balls that got dropped or really spiked by the defensive team, Jay actually has like a lot of LA stories. He's just walking down the room one day.
I have an OJ story. Yeah, and this was after all this.
After all
this. This was after the dust settled. Like, okay, when did that Star Wars Phantom Menace come out? Because it was at the premiere for that.
99.
Okay, so I'm standing in line.
Yeah, I think it was like 99.
As my father did me when Star Wars came out, I took my kid out of school that day. Her and I went and stood in line to go to see this.
Did you go to Chinese theater?
No, we did not. I mean, I've been there for Star Wars. No, this was in Century City. So we're standing in line, which is the fancy part of LA, and standing in like a 2-hour line. And in front of me is AC Collins, right? His family. So we're standing there. Next thing you know, here comes OJ and his kids. Hey, AC. And he looks at me and he goes, Do you mind if we get in line with you guys? You know, because his buddy. I was like, nah, no problem, dude. Hung out for like 2 hours in line with OJ. Everybody thought I knew OJ, basically.
Well, yeah.
While we're standing in line, one of his lawyers comes walking by, the Bob Shapiro guy comes walking away. It was just like insane LA moment. But people were like yelling like murder and stuff, and he's with his kids and stuff. He was completely cool.
Oh, yeah,
signed an autograph for my daughter. Like,
I mean, if you got off on murder, wouldn't you be the nicest guy in the world?
Yeah, you would think that you'd run a clean life after that.
Well, yeah, but he did not do that. He did not do that.
I think the payback came that way. You know.
Well, yeah, they got him in a way that they could, but again,
and they really threw the book at him for that one. I think to make up for the fumble.
If you put someone in a room and you shut the door and you got a gun, that's kidnapping. It's armed kidnapping, and it's no different. If you use the gun to kidnap or for intimidation, the law says the same thing.
Gosh.
So ultimately, if that's what went down in that collecting situation where he ended up going to prison for, then that is what it is. But back to the case, ultimately, it was a miscarriage of justice. In my opinion,
I believe so.
Going through all the evidence that they had, the DA and their team and the police involved in the investigation dropped the ball so hard on this. But in the interim, the defensive team that OJ hired did their job. They hit a home run.
They did their job.
I mean, they had to swing for the fence on every single thing that they did, and they used the temperature of the country to their benefit. They used what the police had done incorrectly to their benefit. The whole glove thing about him not taking his blood pressure medicine to not fit.
There's some really
there's so many
things in this documentary.
Many clever things that the defensive team did that you really can see this.
And talking to the police officers that now, because it would interview several of them nowadays, and you always wondered, man, whatever happened to that quote-unquote racist cop that blew the case for them? I always wondered, what did this do? He can't go on in life. You know, everybody knows who he is, hates him. And when he took the stand and was like, did you ever plant evidence? I plead the fifth. Have you ever framed anyone? I plead the fifth. Like, what? Like, you can't... That right there shut the door on the case for... Gosh, could you imagine being the prosecutor?
What's he doing now?
He said his life is ruined from that moment. Still ruined.
He will never be in law enforcement again.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah.
But if he showed
he's
up,
always forever tagged.
If he showed up today looking for a sales job, I wouldn't know who he was. I wouldn't.
Oh, I would.
Well, maybe you would.
I think everybody would know that was around that time.
But I don't.
Tyler, do you know what he looks like? No. All right. So
Tyler didn't even know what episode.
I guess you'd have to be. I guess you'd have to be.
Starting to have second
45 or 50 year old.
His life choices these days.
Well, he's got a Van Halen shirt on today. So
yeah, but.
He's wearing black like me. Look, head to toe black.
Are we going to put him on blast for this right now, or no?
Why?
He's looking at me like, "Don't you dare put me on blast for this."
Tyler's coming into his own.
I think he really needs to learn the lesson, though. That if your team
on the
loses,
next break.
You stick by your team.
Oh, he gave up on Chiefs. He gave up on Chiefs.
I came in with my Chiefs stuff on, as I'm known to do. But someone who claims to be a massive fan of that team went to several games this year.
That's cool. It's a radio station.
Not wearing any Chiefs stuff.
Yeah. Not till next year.
And that's what I always say is like, you guys don't know. I mean, yeah, it's great. And I love this
big
team.
Time on this
I
episode.
love this team so much. But I have to come in the next day, win, lose, or draw, and deal with it.
Just like
I have to put in
just
new
like
imaging.
the attorneys on this
to talk about
documentary that we're supposed to be talking about.
I have to sit down with Ned, who's a lifelong Eagles fan, and discuss the game with him. But I did so as a lifelong Chiefs fan, wearing my Chiefs gear.
Yeah, we'll be back with our summary of this documentary.
Yeah, Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave, Tyler. Jay Stevens, Mike the Intern, back in the studio one more time. It is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 219. So inevitably, I felt like I was just like watching something I'd already seen. So I'd give it like 2.5.
Oh, gosh. See, sometimes it's so weird how sometimes
it's just like
I'm going 5, perfect 5.
I just think it frustrated me because I'm sitting there watching it going, how did you guys not all know this? How stupid is the American public that you literally have to hold their hand and show them? But time and time again,
it was presented really well. They showed evidence they could not use in court. Again, when you see that evidence, your mind is really blown.
A big win for the defensive team.
It was presented almost like a movie. Like you get goosebumps. You're like, and I knew the whole story, like Titanic. I knew the whole story, but it was really presented well. Great documentary. I thought it was. I'll give it a 5.
I mean, put together well. It's just I didn't see anything I didn't know. I mean, all the inadmissible stuff I already knew about.
And hearing the police officers talk today about it back, that's
you know what it felt like. It felt like we were watching. It felt like that court case was a make good call, like when you're watching a football game.
1000%. It was a make good call for the Rodney King beating
on a defensive holding
for those guys
call,
getting off.
And you know it's not defensive holding call, and then the next set of downs, the refs give the other team a call that's questionable to kind of offset. I felt like that's what this was, which is not justice and not the way it should go in the American justice system.
That's why they found him guilty in the civil trial, which is the craziest thing to me.
Which, again, okay, we all knew it, here. But there are people that can get away with murder if they got enough money to pay for it.
Guess so. What are we watching next week, Michael?
It is my turn, isn't it? Is that?
Were you ill prepared?
No. I think we're going to be able to do there is a documentary that just came out or is going to be released. It is called Sly Lives. Comes out this week on
Sly
Who
and the
Lives.
Family Stone?
It is a documentary done by Questlove of The Roots.
Oh, bro.
And it is about Sly and the Family Stone and the incredible music that band made together. So I've been waiting for weeks to be able to do this one because
Sweet.
it's going to be dope as hell, and I can't
Where's it at?
wait.
Hulu?
Hulu.
Cool.
Yep. Sly Lives. Your assignment, as always, watch us do this live, 9 a.m. On Facebook or YouTube. You can listen to it for free as a podcast on our 104.7 The Cave app, or I do it live at 9, or Jay does it at 6 on Thursdays, and you can listen to us on the radio.
And see us on video, too, with our brand new, nice OnlyFans studio that we have here that Tyler runs for us.
Pushing all the buttons without
Tyler
any
manages
Chiefs
my
gear
OnlyFans
on.
page.
Sans Chiefs gear. You would think that he might be a Raiders fan based on the
dude,
clothes
he's got a
wearing
Van
today.
Halen t-shirt. He's
you wouldn't be able to know the
like
difference.
Me. He's black head to toe like me. He's just trying to be cool like Uncle Jay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what I'd call it. But either way, I'm Mike the Intern. That's Uncle Jay Stevens reminding you
we watch
movies
documentaries
so you don't have to.
to.
It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.
We burn our Chiefs gear so Tyler don't have to.